I can't. I can't even like. No, I just can't. No. After the First Death by Robert Cormier. So earlier this year, I read Robert Cormier's Tunes for Bears to Dance to. And last year, I read Robert Cormier's The Chocolate War, probably his most famous and iconic book. And I have to say, I am a fan, a very big fan of Robert Cormier. I think he was a fantastic writer, and as far as I'm concerned, pretty much the undisputed king of YA fiction. Although with Robert Cormier, that distinction doesn't really mean much. But uh, even kind of being familiar with Robert Cormier's style and some of the themes that he's played around with in his books before, I was utterly unprepared for this book after the first death. This book right here stunned me. I mean, like it was literally like getting smacked in the face, stunned. I don't think I've ever read a book quite like this. I don't think I've ever read a book quite so bleak and hopeless as this, but also one that rings so disturbingly true. This book right here is an absolute stone cold masterpiece. I truly cannot praise this book highly enough. In fact, I will go so far as to say, like the Modern Library and Time magazine compile lists of like the 100 best books of the 20th century. I'm going to go so far as to say if this book is not on those lists, then those lists are invalid or at the very least incomplete. That is how highly I think of this book. The Chocolate War was a knockout, but I think this might truly be Robert Cormier's masterpiece. It is, words can scarcely convey what this book made me feel and what this book made me think. But I'm going to try as best I might to convey it to you, dear viewer. So, after the first death, is this book about? What is the story of Robert Cormier's After the First Death? Well, to summarize this book, it's going to be something of a tap dance because the last thing I would ever want to do is risk spoiling anything in this book. Because if you ever choose to read this, and I sincerely hope that you will, I think it would be best to go in blind as to the intricacies of the plot because I think it will hit you all the harder if you're not aware of some of the things that are going to happen. But to give the broad strokes of this book, this is a YA novel, but once again, with Robert Cormier, that doesn't really mean much because that man wrote literature. I mean, he wrote literature with a capital L, and even though they're marketed towards young adults, this book can be read by anyone of any age and enjoyed. I mean, I'm not a young adult anymore, and I thoroughly love this book. But anyway, it's nominally a YA book, a thriller novel about a school bus full of children that is hijacked by terrorists. That's kind of just the broadest of strokes. So uh, in the book, there is a group of terrorists from an unnamed, presumably Middle Eastern country who hijack a school bus full of young, like 5 and 6 year olds, on the way to summer camp. And they take the school bus to this abandoned railroad bridge and proceed to hold all the children as well as the bus driver hostage and begin negotiations with the United States government for the release of certain political prisoners as well as the dismantling of a highly secretive organization within the U.S. government. That's some heady stuff for a YA book. It really is. This is again once more with Robert Cormier. YA doesn't really mean much, but anyway, so we have three principal characters in this book. Miro is a young teenaged terrorist freedom fighter for this unnamed um, country, again, presumably like Middle Eastern, but we never know for sure. And he has been brought along with his superiors in this kind of cell of radicals to hijack this bus. And then we have Kate, the bus driver. Kate is also a teenager, a teenage girl, who was filling in for her uncle driving these kids to summer camp and just happened to draw the wrong straw on the wrong day and got caught up in this. And then we have Ben. Ben Marchand is the son of a high ranking United States general who presides over this mysterious intelligence organization called Inner Delta, which the terrorists are demanding be dismantled or they will kill the children on this bus. So that's all I'm going to say about the plot of After the First Death, because again, I would never want to risk spoiling anything that happens in this book. This is not a long book, it's only like 230 something pages. It's not long, but damn, it hits like a ton of bricks. So, Robert Cormier, like I said, he wrote books about teenagers, but that's not to say that this book is necessarily for exclusively teenagers. Again, the term YA with Robert Cormier just doesn't carry much weight. And if you do want to count this, though, as a YA book, this blows basically everything else in that entire genre out of the water. Like, we all know that the YA genre now is kind of meh, you know. You got the Hunger Games, which are pretty good. You got Twilight, which is pretty not good, and then you have like Divergent stuff. It's kind of cut and paste a little bit nowadays, usually involving a teenage girl in some kind of love triangle and some kind of dystopic setting with the fate of the world hanging in the balance, stuff like that. Um, Robert Cormier's books are not like that. They are gritty, they are painfully realistic, and they are deeply upsetting as well. In fact, After the First Death may be one of the most upsetting books that I have ever read in my life. And it is, I think, probably without contest, the most visceral thing that I have ever read. Like, there are very few books. In fact, like I said, I don't know if there has ever been a book other than this one that made my heart beat quite so fast and quite so hard as this one. I mean, reading this book, I was literally sitting there like feeling my heart pounding inside my chest. It's that gripping. So it explores some themes that Robert Cormier kind of liked to play around with in his fiction. And if you've seen my review of Tunes for Bears to Dance to, you'll know that one thing that he liked to explore was the nature of evil and how evil can be combated. And After the First Death, it grapples with that directly, but it does so in a very interesting way. And this book is about teenagers. The three principal characters in this book of Miro, Kate, and Ben are all teenagers. And this is a book that absolutely needed to be about teenagers. If the characters in this book were adults, and they very well could have been, you could have rewritten this and had the characters be grown-ups. But if that had been so, this book would not have been nearly as powerful as it was, because this is a book that needed to be about adolescence. Because what the book is ultimately about, and this book is about something. That's the beauty of this book. It's not just a thriller novel. No, this is literature right here. I mean, this is literature of the highest order right here. But one of the things that the book is principally about is kind of deconstructing childhood, and kind of poking holes in our common conceptions of childhood as being innocent and kind of without evil. So in this book, Miro is the teenage terrorist who has been brought along to help hijack the school bus, and Kate is a teenage American girl who just happened to be driving the bus on that day. And as a teenager, you haven't really seen all of the world yet. You're still trying to figure things out. You're still trying to figure yourself out, and that's where the book's power comes from, because of the very astute observations that the book makes through the lens of these characters. Miro is a terrorist. He is a fanatic. He will murder any of these children if he thinks that it will help the cause of freeing his undisclosed homeland. And Kate sees this and she's appalled by this behavior. But the funny thing that she realizes is that he's still a kid. And being a kid, he's still pretty innocent. And that's one of the most intriguing observations that this book makes, and one of the most valuable, I think, is the observation that evil can be pure, that evil can be innocent. Because this, again, is how it kind of deconstructs childhood, because we think of kids, as being innocent and pure and not being, vicious or evil. But that's not really the case, or rather, it is the case, but they can still be evil. Like, you ever seen those kids that pour salt on a slug, or pull the wings off flies, or burn ants with a magnifying glass? They're children, they're innocent, they don't know what they're doing is wrong, they have no concept of the ramifications of it, but they're still evil nonetheless. And that is one of the most brilliant observations that After the First Death makes, is that evil can be pure, evil can be innocent. And that is really kind of disturbing in its implications, because Miro is, he is evil. They're going to kill children in this book, but he's still a kid and he has no actual concept of what he's doing, and he's still innocent despite the fact that he's pure evil. Very kind of confusing emotions there, but again, very astute. And the another aspect of this book that is so just kind of marvelous is that it really explores the dangers of patriotism, because Ben, the third principal character in this book, is the son of a general, one of the high-ranking generals in this organization, which the terrorists are wanting to be dismantled. And towards the end of the book, Ben's father volunteers him to be a messenger in this standoff scenario, right? And that's the one aspect of this where you might have to suspend a little bit of disbelief, because I kind of find it hard to believe that a child would ever be allowed to be a go-between in that kind of situation. But if you can suspend that little bit of disbelief there, this book is a home run of the highest order. But anyway, so towards the end of the book, as the standoff is progressing, Ben's father volunteers him to be a go-between between the terrorists and the negotiators, and deliver a certain package to them. And of course, Ben just gets mercilessly tortured by the terrorists once he's in their clutches, because Robert Cormier, he didn't hold back. Like, his books did not pander to children. That's why I say, even though this is considered a YA book, that doesn't mean much, because this is as mature as it comes. Like, children die, children get tortured. It's brutal. It is ruthless, but it's all true to life. It doesn't pander to children. And that's why this is the best kind of YA book, because it elevates the young readers who might read this, instead of telling a dumbed down story that lowers itself to their level. But anyway, so Ben's father is a veteran of World War II. This book takes place when it was written in like the 1970s. This is a older book, but Ben's father was a veteran of World War II, and in certain aspects of the book which follows him, he remarks upon his own passionate patriotism and love of country, and how he and all his friends signed up to go fight the Japs in World War II, and how there was also that element of innocence, of youthful innocence with them when they did that. And one of the most, again, just remarkably astute observations that this book makes is that there's not any difference between the terrorists who are threatening to kill a busload of children and the American general who would sacrifice his own son in order to resolve this conflict. There isn't really any difference. And this book is ahead of its time in many ways, by leaps and bounds ahead of its time, I think, because it said some things that I think have greater precedence now, greater relevance now than they did at the time the book was written. We all know that America is not always the good guy. The book showed that anyone can be evil in any country. The Americans in this book, the generals, aren't morally superior to the terrorists really at all, because they are quite literally willing to manipulate and put in direct hazard children to accomplish their ends. And so it's just a remarkable parallel that the book makes, that patriotism and blind nationalism are very dangerous things. And that, again, that's why this book has some hard lessons that children would do well to learn. But now let's talk about, the inner workings of the book, the technical aspects. So the writing of this book is great. It's a Robert Cormier book. Of course, it's well written. The writing in this is remarkably strong. No complaints with the writing. And then the characters, oh my goodness, they're great. They're fully human. Miro, even though you can't really condone what he's doing, you damn well understand why he's doing it, because he grew up in refugee camps just living like an absolute animal, and these soft Americans they can't even imagine that kind of life, what he's gone through. And so there's just such a culture clash there, and he's so blindly fanatical to this organization that he's a part of, fighting for his unnamed homeland. And it's so sad and it's so kind of pathetic, but you understand it through and through. And he is truly a fully human character. And Kate, the bus driver, is also equally human. We see so many facets of her personality, struggling to be brave in this situation, struggling to try to do the right thing, or what she thinks to be the right thing in this, and struggling with her own limitations. And it's, again, the characters in this are great. And then Ben, the guilt that he wrestles with after certain things in the book happen, the self-loathing, it all just hits. I mean, just goes right to the core. The characters are great, and the actual story of this, again, that's why I don't want to spoil it, because this, again, is one of the most visceral and powerful things I think I've ever read. Robert Cormier did not play it safe. Um, it's not a book that that protects any of its characters. It's not a book that kind of plays by the rules that you might expect. It's children in peril, but most of the time it's like, no worries, everyone's going to get out. Oh no, this book is not like that. This book is maybe the most pessimistic book I've ever read, and it's impeccably restrained as well. And it's not very violent, even though it really had the potential to be quite violent. Cormier rarely indulges in explicit violence, but still the atmosphere is so tense, so highly strong, that when certain things do happen in this book, it hits like a ton of bricks. There is a scene in this book. Well, actually, there are a lot of scenes in this book that hit like a ton of bricks, but there's one scene in particular in this book where you're literally like, no, 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 please don't tell me it's going where I think it's going. Don't tell me this is going to happen. Don't tell me this is going to go there, but it does, because it's playing it out like it has to play it out to be authentic. And it is absolutely brutal. Like, this is the kind of book where after you finish it, you just kind of sit there and you're like, damn, that was something else. And again, it's so valuable, I think, because it explores the nature of evil, but beyond that, it explores how evil can be fought. or if it actually can be fought, if you have to become evil yourself to do it. Like the old Nietzsche quote, he who fights with monsters should see to it that he does not himself become a monster in the process. It's like that because as the story progresses and you see the lengths that the American generals are willing to go to resolve this conflict, which are to just destroy the lives of a child to do this, you see that there's not really any moral high ground. But the value of this book, I think, lies in what that says about our actual world. I think the most valuable thing that a book can do, the highest praise that can be given to a book, is if it shows you an aspect of life or the world that you might not have hitherto seen. And this book does it, and it does it fantastically. So, after 9/11, old George W. instituted the Patriot Act, which is, I think, has made the world, or at least made America, a vastly worse place. But the question kind of at the heart of this book, which pertains to that kind of thing, is that how broken is the world where in order to fight wrong, you have to do wrong yourself, or is that even possible? Again, this is just an absolute bitch slap of hard truths and hard questions in this book, but oh my goodness, it is phenomenal. It's the kind of book, first of all, it is relentlessly gripping. I mean, you are sucked into this from page one. That heart of mine was hammering reading this. It's entertaining, but also it is deeply thoughtful. And that is truly the mark of a good book that can both, suck you in, keep you engaged, but also keep you thinking. And my word, the emotions that this book makes you feel are just, again, words can scarcely convey. So to rate After the First Death by Robert Cormier, this book gets an A+, the highest rating that I can give it. This is literature right here with a capital L. So, have you read After the First Death by Robert Cormier? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it. If you have not read After the First Death, this book, perhaps more than any other book that I have ever reviewed here on this channel, I'm going to recommend this. I'm going to say, I'm going to urge you, I'm going to implore you, if you have not read this book, to read it. It's only $7.99 this edition was, so it's hardly going to break the bank. But truly, let me urge you, if you have not read this book, and if you take only one recommendation that I ever give on this channel, I think I would say let it be this one. This book right here is, I don't know that I've ever read a book quite like this. So powerful, so visceral, so hopeless, so bleak, and so utterly ruthless, because that ending, y'all, damn, I knew after reading The Chocolate War and Tunes for Bears to Dance to now that Robert Cormier doesn't really have happy endings in his books, but even I was unprepared for just how unhappy this book got. It ends as horribly as it is possible for this story to end, but it makes sense, it's authentic, and I think it's just a masterpiece, absolutely. So, this book, again, probably more than any other book recommendation that I can give, pick up After the First Death, read it. It is a stunning work of art, and I think this is just something that you should really give thought to reading. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.